Will Tesla build a Gigafactory in Singapore? Elon has said that they require multiple more Gigafactories to achieve their ambition of extreme scale. Tesla wants to sell 20 million cars per year by 2030. In this video, I'll speak with two engineers to hear their views about how feasible is it for Singapore to be a Gigafactory candidate. Click subscribe to stay updated to more videos on Tesla. Martin, what should the audience know about you?
Hi everyone, I'm Martin. Currently I work as a process engineer in one of the pharma companies, which is located also nearby in Tuas South. So I'm a car enthusiast myself, so I started to look into Tesla as a potential EV option in future, and also to research a bit about the company as a whole. So, after watching your videos, I'm very inspired by yourself and the conviction that you had for Tesla as a whole. So I've also begun my investing journey, and hence, I want to take this chance to also give some shout outs to you and hoping to learn a lot more from each other.
Thank you for the support. So for most people, when they think of Singapore, they think of the movie Crazy Rich Asians, or they think of pictures of Marina Bay area. We're here filming today at Tuas. Tell us more about this place, Martin.
Yep. So Tuas is actually the designated area for heavy and light industry since the 1970s. So currently, it's just named as the Tuas Industrial Estate. It consists of industries like pharmaceutical companies like to set up shop here. Also has light industries, steel making, warehousing, all sorts of industry you can think of is typically located at Tuas. So some trivia for you guys, right? Tuas was actually a Malay word that is derived from fishing techniques. It started out as a fishing village and it was like mostly swampland before the relocation in the past. And that's the reason how they derived this name. Tuas is actually based off a Malay word. So some
very
trivia for you
interesting.
guys.
Next time you hear Tuas, it's a daytime fishing technique that originates from a Malay word.
Yeah. So and now this whole industry estate covers approximately about 680 hectares. And also is the home to the future Tuas Megaport. I think it's very well talked about by the Singapore government and PSA. So they plan to move all the relevant current port facilities to the Megaport in future, which is currently built in phases. So phase 1 is currently already operational and it's going to be completed by 2040. Yeah, and it's estimated to be able to handle twice the volume that of the container units as compared to 2040.
So if you hear all these heavy vehicles, it's literally because we are in a heavy industrial area. There are a lot of heavy vehicles passing by us. So right behind us further down is actually where the Tuas Megaport is. It's one of the busiest ports in the world. Even today, before final completion, it's about a 30-year construction project, 4 phases. So when people think Gigafactory, the first thing they'll say, Singapore, no land lah. What's your take?
Yeah, personally, I think there needs to be a lot of reclamation works that needs to be carried out. Okay, to put things in perspective, right? A Gigafactory, if I'm not wrong, if I've done my research correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 680 hectares. And if you compare to the Tuas Megaport estimated area, which is about 1,334 hectares, so that's about 60%, which means if already you have this amount of land set aside for the Megaport, you have to reclaim about 60% of this amount, which is a massive undertaking. Yeah, so even though, to put things in perspective, there are also current reclamation efforts to try to reclaim land offshore of Tuas, nearby Jurong Island, all these things. But not, in my opinion, it's not really in the scale of that kind of that the Gigafactory will require. Yeah, so of course, to draw some parallels, right? Hyundai has set up a EV making factory here in Jurong Innovation District, which is not in Tuas, but is set up at a much smaller scale, estimated to produce about 25 to 50, if I'm not wrong, 25 to 50,000 vehicles. Yeah, so, but planning to, they plan to only sell about maybe like 5-6K of them here. So that's something maybe not a Gigafactory, but a smaller scale could be considered by a Tesla. Or they could actually shift some of the operations underground. That's just my personal take, but it may incur a lot more logistic costs, right? Because as compared to a horizontal assembly line, you have to find space for the Gigapress.
Yes.
I think currently, if you build the plant vertically, it may not be very possible, and it will incur a lot more capex. So maybe it's viable for Tesla to set up shop here, not for EVs, probably for other products like the solar roofs, solar walls, power, the charging facilities, or even the Tesla Optimus robots, right? Possible, but still there's a lot of logistical challenges ahead. Yeah, in my opinion, it's not unfounded that they say land is not enough. It is really not enough. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that land is scarce, but it's not impossible. And if we find smaller variants of Gigafactory, so example, Gigafactory Berlin is 50% smaller than Giga Texas. They don't come in one size. There are multiple sizes for Gigafactories. And like Tesla Austin is 4 levels. You could build underground or extend a little bit up. It would cost a little bit more. So Tesla would be very deliberate in building a factory here. Or as Martin mentioned, products that doesn't require so much space or scale, like the solar panels or maybe even Tesla bot in the future. So space seems possible. Elon has said that one of the key reasons for building gigafactories and one of the things they learned was to localize the supply chain. Now the problem here in Singapore is that we would have to import practically all the raw materials and all the machinery. Is that a deal breaker?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a steadfast answer, yes. Because if you think about it, right, importation of all the raw materials will probably incur more carbon footprint. Hopefully, this is not a too simplistic way of putting things. Because the moment you have to import, you have to incur transportation costs, it increases carbon footprint, which goes against the mantra of Tesla, which is sustainable energy, right? So the moment that it's not just the business needs, it goes against the idea of having sustainable energy. If I have to build a factory that has to import everything, then I'm good. Not only just the money, and it's also going against the environmental goals that Tesla wishes to have. One thing to consider about, apart from the importation costs that Tesla may have to incur over the setting up of the potential factory facility here, right, is that Singapore might not have, okay, let's hypothetically say that they may be able to build an EV factory here. But Singapore doesn't have a very strong automotive manufacturing presence. They used to be able to make small cars for Ford, and hence there's a Ford factory, right? But it's because due to the development needs, they decided to divest this away as part of our manufacturing company. So if you ask me, we are like starting to build it again from ground up as compared to other competitors like Indonesia, Thailand, which has a strong automotive manufacturing presence already.
Supply chains are very hard here. On top of that, Singapore doesn't have a big domestic market. 6 million people, 600,000 cars, which is less than 0.03% of the world's cars. So while it's next and right behind the Tuas megaport, could an export-focused strategy for a Tesla Gigafactory here work?
I mean, that's a very good question, right? Because in fact, Hyundai has decided to deploy something similar as well, right? Because they are, say, some of the cars will be manufactured in Singapore, and they are planning to make like 5,000, 6,000, which I mentioned earlier, to be sold in the local market, whereas exporting the rest. So something like that actually could be viable for, I wouldn't say pure export, but allocating a portion of what they manufacture here is to me is a good solution. And on top of that, right, since that we are already going to advocate for, as part of the Singapore Green Plan, to advocate for greener vehicles, potential collaborative effort between, like, say, EDB and Tesla, providing more tax incentives and rebates, right, for setting up shop here, and then to accelerate our transition to greener vehicles. Say, who knows, like helping our private taxi fleets to transit to Tesla taxis, robo taxis, or even lower the cost of buying a Tesla here as compared to other EV models, barring COE, barring those market forces aside. I feel there's a lot more potential ahead. Yeah. So for this part, if it really comes to fruition, in my opinion, I don't think Tesla really needs to rely on pure export. There is definitely the demand in Singapore alone. Even with 600,000 cars, it's still it's a good PR move, I would say. Yeah.
And I don't think if we look ahead, while Singapore is a very small market for cars, if you think of a product like Tesla bot, if a Tesla bot is going to cost $40,000-$50,000 US to buy, I think Singapore is going to be one of the biggest markets in Southeast Asia for Tesla bot. You think about the cost of labor. Cost of labor here is high, which makes a Tesla bot even more compelling from day one in Singapore.
Yeah, in fact, it's like one-time capex. You can see it as buying the Tesla bot as a one-off capex.
Yeah.
And then you can just save on the labor, especially for labor-intensive jobs, right? So, yeah, I do see that, it's a dream, right? Where if Tesla really sets up a manufacturing presence here, that's something hopefully to some extent may come to fruition apart from just a consumer perspective. Yeah.
And if you think about it a little bit more, so service industry like food and beverage, labor costs very high, shortage is high as well. And as the country thinks about being more sustainable, like you have a barista or a cook in a restaurant, labor costs are easily 50 to 80k a year. So you get a Tesla bot in there. And we have something at Tesla bot, you probably want it to be an environment where it's low crime, where people won't steal it away from a cafe. And Singapore is one of the most conducive low crime environments in Southeast Asia to actually pilot a more broad rollout of Tesla bot. So I know it sounds pretty insane, but if you think about it, 8 years from now, why not?
I think I wouldn't say it's over optimistic. I think relying on AI-enabled robots, right, to help us, in our menial tasks or even service labor, that kind. It's not too far-fetched to think about it. So I'm equally optimistic as you are.
And actually, if you speak to government, you speak to the Economic Development Board, you speak to the Prime Minister's office, most people will say, what do we need? More babies. How do we get more babies? Free people.
Yes, exactly.
So, population shortage, we need more babies. Tesla bot, Gigafactory. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely will hope that this will eventually come to pass, and that would be a much nicer place to live in Singapore if that really comes to pass. Yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Eugene, thanks for being back in the channel.
Thank you.
What should the audience know about you?
Well, I design chips, and I've been working in the industry for over 20 years now. I love tech, and I love anything related to new technology or anything new coming on board. Yep.
So, thanks for being here. We want to ask you, what does it take to build a Gigafactory in Singapore?
I think that's going to be quite a challenge. We are space constrained, and the other thing is we're also energy constrained, right? So I suspect if we were ever to have a Gigafactory, it would need to have some energy. It has to be renewable energy, right? I think that's what Tesla always wants. So we are trying to transition. We still rely a lot on fossil fuels. So a Gigafactory would have to be almost entirely solar powered probably, or powered with some renewable energy. And I think we'll have to figure that one out first before it's going to become viable for us. I think because Tesla plays such a big part of that, right? There is hope because we're very aggressively moving to solar.
Yeah.
I think we're also exploring other things, right? Like recently there was talk on nuclear, but that's quite a few years out. And and then of course our other challenges would be labor.
Mm-hmm.
So my feeling is it's going to be something that has to be really automated because we're always going to be in this labor crunch, right? And how do we solve that in a short time? It's not so straightforward. So we would probably want, if we were ever to consider it, the brief would probably be how much of that factory can be automated and can rely on perhaps these Tesla bots, more so than how much manual labor you can bring in.
Fair.
to staff a factory like that.
Fair.
Yeah.
There are actually quite a number of factories. So I've used to work with many customers in the Tuas area where there are less than 100 employees in really large factories, very high levels of automation. And to Eugene's point, if it's a Tesla bot factory built with a lot of Tesla bots, with obviously some human supervisors making sure things work,
Yep.
it may be viable. But the energy point is a big one. Right now, we are using the cleanest fossil fuel, natural gas, in Singapore.
Yep.
It's not because the country doesn't want to use renewable energy, but because it's land constrained. Where do we build solar panels? Where do we build windmills? When we were in Austin a month ago, we saw like an ocean of windmills and solar panels that we can never fit in Singapore. So as Eugene alluded to, Singapore is building a pretty ambitious project, an undersea cable to basically transfer solar power from North Australia to Singapore and eventually the rest of Southeast Asia.
Yep. Actually, that's going to be amazing if that really happens. I guess it is happening, right?
Well, it should be ready by 2027, according to
that'd be
plans.
great. Yeah.
So it's tough. There are a lot of challenges for Singapore to overcome to be a viable Gigafactory candidate. But we also know that the government, like Economic Development Board, they do their best to attract the best industries. After all, we've got Dyson making their motors globally here in Jurong East, in Singapore, for the world. What do you think the Singapore government could do to provide the right incentives or to allay any concerns in building a gigafactory here?
I mean, EDB actually does a great job. Okay, if you look at what they've done over the years, attracting investment here, the tricky part is, you know, how the tax generally has changed. So attracting investment here with tax incentives is actually a less powerful tool now, mainly because of you know what happened with the US. So they have this thing called BAPS, right, where they try to make it fairer for countries that offer very low taxation trying to get investment. So it has to be other things, and usually EDB does offer things like they try to subsidize the cost as well. So that's quite powerful, but that doesn't typically cover everything. Usually, I mean, from my experience, they would cover maybe half the salaries, and usually they will also want a strong R&D component in that investment. So they would use the negotiation would be, okay, you can have your factory, but you need to commit to a certain level of R&D investment over the course of maybe 10, 20 years. And then that has to come with skills, right?
Yeah.
So we would need to show, the EDB has to show the investor, Tesla maybe in this case, that we can provide the skills, the talent. And because they'll be concerned about that, if they're going to do R&D, where can they get the talent from, right? Now, Singapore is quite a attractive place for people who want to come and work and live. Smart people, you know, people with good qualifications. So that in itself is good. If we stay that way and we stay competitive that way, we shouldn't have a problem attracting talent. Especially if some big name comes in, right?
Yeah.
More people will come in. So EDB have their work cut out in that area, right? Mainly because the tax part is less attractive now. Just thinking of other ways. Perhaps one way is, you know, if Singapore shows that they're really pushing very hard towards this sustainability, clean energy, then someone like Tesla may be more encouraged to want to come. Hopefully, and I think there's hope there, right?
Yes.
Because we are. But yeah, I think that's where it's going to have to be, right? A combination of sharing of costs, and of course So EDB is a good they're good at forming partnerships. So they would probably say, okay, let me see what JTC can do, right? Or what some of these other government bodies can do, and bring people together. Actually, that's what EDB does a lot of, and help with those negotiations. So that's probably some of the areas that they will try to do this, make this happen.
So on top of Eugene's point, Singapore has been consistently rated by World Bank as one of the easiest places in the world to do business in. Singapore is one of the most attractive locations, not just in Asia Pacific, but the world, for talent to be in. Strong English-speaking workforce, low crime, for talent who stays here long-term with family, zero capital gains tax.
Right.
It's a very attractive place to be in. But is that enough?
Yeah, so that's already our established what we are known for. But some other things, our regulatory frameworks are very easy to understand. I think that's a big part. Our taxation policy is also simple, right? We don't, like, you know, in the US, taxes are very complicated, right, generally. But here, the government tries very hard to make it as simple as transparent as possible. So companies like that. People like that too. You know, when they come here, their taxes are easy to do. So those are little things that actually work in our favor. I think you know, as we continue to push for universities to churn out more graduates in these areas of tech and engineering, that should help us. Yeah.
So last question for Eugene. 3 locations: Thailand, South Korea, Singapore. If you were Tesla, where will you pick for your next Asia Pacific factory that's not in China?
And so my heart would say Singapore, but South Korea, I'm not sure. I guess I still think out of those three countries, I think Singapore probably has the advantage, being predominantly English speaking, number one. It's advanced in terms of our systems, our taxation policies, our regulatory frameworks. I think those things make a big difference. The main problem that we face, or rather the challenge, is the land, right? And the energy part,
Yes.
right? And that contributes to it because we also don't have as much land to devote to alternative energy sources, the sustainable energy sources. But I think we can overcome it, right? Technology, a combination of that. And then I think labor is maybe not as big a deal if it's manual labor because they'll probably solve it with automation. Yeah. But it'll be, I think, some ways out. We probably won't have the first Tesla bot factory here. It will probably be one that makes a mass production of it, and then perhaps using Tesla bots or more advanced AI and factory automation to create a very automated factory using a lot of tech. Yeah, I think that's probably, if it happens, that's what it will be. Just my opinion.
Thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Daren, for this. It's fun.
It's been very insightful hearing from both Martin and Eugene, engineers, on their perspective on how viable it is to build a gigafactory here. My take is that it's going to take Singapore some time before it's a viable candidate. Not now because land is scarce, so we need to wait until some oil and gas refineries, large locations like Shell in Bukom or Jurong Island, as they vacate and transition to new industries. Maybe we could have more renewable power and suitable land for Tesla gigafactories. Labor costs. What if we have Tesla bots first produced in other locations like the US, then they come down here and help build and run a gigafactory here in the future? And years from now, Elon's trying to get more battery supplies from around the world, diversify the supply chain away from over-reliance on just China. So if Indonesia becomes a reliable supply of nickel, maybe they can be brought here to Singapore to refine. So what do you think about Singapore being a gigafactory location? Does it still make sense? Does Singapore still have hope? Some of you believe so in a recent poll. And Dyson has their global headquarters here. They do produce their global motors in this country in a factory in Jurong East. So that's possible. And Elon has said that they're constantly improving on the machine that builds the machine. And gigafactories are one of the most important products. If you found this video constructive, please click the like button. Hit subscribe to find out where Tesla will build their next gigafactories.